This drill is an all-time classic in any physical education setting, where the athletes, the minnows, need to get from one side of the floor or field to the other without being dislodged of their ball, aka caught by the defenders, the sharks, in a drill also known as stormy seas. Using the end boards and/or restraining lines as boundaries, start with a coach and one volunteer, or possibly more depending on the size of the group, in one or more of the three zones, the offensive zone, defensive zone, and neutral zone on the lacrosse floor, otherwise using the full floor with large groups. Creases could also be utilized as another boundary that only the sharks can step in. Variation number 1 uses the defensive or offensive zone as boundaries. Have all players, aka minnows, start against the side boards with balls in everyone's stick, ready to try and successfully cradle to the opposite side boards without dropping their ball. The coach and initial volunteers, the sharks, are trying to strip the players of the ball. All players should be encouraged to use 2 hands as they cradle. Players become sharks if they drop the ball, get stripped, or get pushed over one of the boundary lines. Otherwise, the same sharks can be used for the entire game, which places high cardio demands on the sharks. Players need to protect their ball and should use other tactics like using another player as a screen or any other sort of deception that will help them get safely to the other side of the floor. The game ends when every player has lost their ball, or there are a few players left who haven't dropped their ball, which can be better for safety purposes instead of having multiple players stick checking 1 or 2 players towards the end. The most common error is obviously not adequately protecting the ball. Players should be cued to hide the ball from the sharks and keep their feet moving. Variation number 2 uses the neutral zone as boundaries. Players perform the same drill as previously mentioned, but in the neutral zone and boundaries on both sides, that being the restraining lines. This is the hardest variation of this drill and somewhat simulates ragging the ball and not being pushed back over the restraining line. With 1 or 2 designated sharks for the entire game for this variation, the minnows have to get to the other side without dropping their ball or going outside of the boundaries. Players must sit on the bench or stand outside of the restraining line if caught by the sharks, rotating 2 different defenders into the drill at the coach's discretion, each rep or each game. Once again, this drill is super fun and is always a player favorite. Surely they will want to play another round, so be prepared to run this one several times at the player's request.